Hey guys, welcome back to the Lovin Dubai show. Today's guest is Dr. Sheen Gurrib, a scientist, entrepreneur, and the voice behind Dream Girl podcast. She's also just launched a series, My Younger Self, where she reflects on her lessons from her own path in life. Welcome to the show. We're excited for this conversation.
Yay, me too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for voicing and being such a girl boss. But I want to ask you, what inspired you to start Dream Girl podcast?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think during COVID, everyone was looking for a side project, and that's when it started for me as well. But I come from Mauritius originally, born and brought up, and I became the first girl from Mauritius to have gone to Oxford and Cambridge, and I thought, why? It's too late for this to be happening. And then the whole thing about access and, equality came up, and I realized, okay, you know what? At the time on my little island, I didn't know much about what could be a career. And at uni, I met some incredible women. One of my friends dropped out of uni to become an astronaut.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, these stories you don't hear on a daily basis, and I'm lucky enough to be around these people. So I thought, okay, let me just create a platform to share these conversations. And that's how the podcast initially started.
So did you grow up in Mauritius?
I did.
And then you were the first woman from Mauritius to attend Oxford. Amazing. And were you aware before you attended how big of a deal this was, and what was it like there? Were you aware of it there, that it was such an important mark, significant?
Oh yeah, when I got in, it was huge. But I wasn't the first to go to Oxford. I was the first to go to both Oxford and Cambridge. So during the time of Oxford, it was already like, oh my goodness, this is surreal that I'm here. And a lot of people had never met someone from Mauritius, so already started to feel like very special. But then when I went to Cambridge and it became apparent that I was the first one, then it felt like, oh wow, this is really weird, because I didn't expect me to be the first one. It's too late for this to be happening.
Well, you have a series called Letters to My Younger Self. Why was it important for you to start the series? What is the story behind it?
Oh yeah, so this again, when I went home recently, I realized that, when you realize you don't fit in anymore when you go back to home. I don't know if you guys have this feeling, but for me, because I grew up there until I was 18, then I spent almost 10 years in the UK, then I moved here. But now when I go back to Mauritius, I don't feel like the girl who was there anymore. And now I see the difference between us because of the experiences I've had, the exposure I've had, or the opportunities, the people I've met. And I thought there are so many other people like this who are still on the island who don't have the experience I have yet. So I thought, okay, what would I do? What would have helped me at that time? What are the advice? And for me, a lot of things that happened that were good came from very important mindset shifts. And I thought, how would I have had those shifts at a younger age? Someone has to tell you, right? So that's why I thought, okay, let me start this where I'm not telling someone else, I'm speaking to my own younger self. And that way, hopefully other people find value.
So what do you think, is the most important mindset shift that you have shared on the podcast?
There are so many of them, but I think the main one is the growth mindset. So it's really important to know that we never stop growing. So whatever stage you're at in life, you need to keep learning and keep questioning your belief systems, the reason behind what you're doing, and also just generally being curious. And I think that's one thing we stop being curious about. As kids, we ask so many questions. We question everything. But the older we grow, we just accept whatever is being told to us, and we never question why do we do certain things in a certain way. And even, we start getting a lot more angry or hurt by what other people say, but we never question where is the root of that hurt. So I think that's why it's really important to keep growing and keep questioning yourself.
Well, your podcasts are, female focused.
Yes.
What do you think are considered to be the most needed topics in your podcast?
Okay, very good question. So, a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome, and I hate that word. And I heard this really cool story. I don't know, have you heard of bicycle face?
No.
So this is a very cool story, and I would love to share it with you. It's so back in the day when the first bicycle came about, it was the first thing. It was revolutionizing how transport was, because before that you had the one big wheel, and women could not use that. And picture Victorian women with big bell dresses. So they couldn't go anywhere unless they had a full carriage with horses. But when the bicycle came about, it was so easy for women to go anywhere. And that's when they started having meetings on how maybe they should have the right to vote. So obviously men were not very happy with that. And they then published in a medical journal that there's a new disease called bicycle face, and it only affects women. And they described all the things like, flushed cheeks, just like your hairline going back, everything to scare women. Yeah, it was in a medical journal. And then obviously women stopped using the bicycle. And the first medical doctor who was female who joined in the US, the first thing she did was disprove that medical condition. And there's this woman called Reshma Sajani. She's the one who said, yesterday's bicycle face is today's imposter syndrome for women. We've been told that there's this syndrome called imposter syndrome. And now whenever we feel like we don't belong somewhere, or I don't know if this is meant for me, am I good enough? We think, oh, that's imposter syndrome. Why? Because you've heard the term. But it doesn't really exist. And the main thing we need, and women need to realize, is we need to get out of our own way. We've made a lot of progress in terms of equality. And what's stopping us most of the time now is our own belief system. So we just need to stop questioning our worth and just do it.
Wow. How, are there practical tips that we can put in place to do that?
I think the practical tip here is pretty much awareness. So the first thing is recognizing that, I don't know, I'm sure you know this as well. Wherever you go and you think, oh, these people have really got their stuff together, you realize that's not true. Everyone is just trying their best to do whatever they want, even being an adult, right? I feel like we're faking it most of the time. And I think it's just acknowledging that no one knows exactly what they're doing. So even if you feel like you don't know it, just try and fake it till you feel like you're good at it, but don't start being the first one to tell yourself that you're not good enough. A lot of people will do that for you, so don't be the first one.
So interesting about imposter syndrome. I hadn't actually thought of it like that, and I love to turn it on its head. It's great.
Yeah, by the way, you actually did maybe change the perspective of imposter syndrome to us. But in your opinion, what do you think is the worst habit women in this generation struggle to cope with?
Worst habit?
Yes.
Ooh, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I want your opinion because there are a lot.
I mean, I don't know about a habit, but
maybe a thought, maybe a belief.
Okay, I'll have one, and I think maybe some people won't like it, but I think a lot of times women feel the need to compete with each other. And that's because we've been propped up against each other so much, and there's this scarcity mindset of there's not enough space for all of us at the top, so we need to compete with each other, which is why sometimes when you have female managers, they're not necessarily the most encouraging ones, because in my experience anyway, it's always been a little bit challenging working with them. And I think that's, again, one mindset we need to change, that we're not competing for the same thing. There's enough going for all of us. And I think people at the top should not compete, they should collaborate.
I agree with you, because women empowerment of women working together has been a wide topic that's talked about all around. And I see it happen between even celebrities like Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez, and even how they compete, Selena Gomez and
the media loves
to
make
against each other, and they're like, we don't hate each other.
We're fine.
We're fine. We're good.
What do you think, if we move back to Dream Girl podcast, is the most heard story, or the most the story that you were most excited to tell?
Oh, is it about a guest or an actual story?
Either. The one that resonates with you the most, I think, that you were most excited about.
I think for me, honestly, because the day the podcast got discovered was through one particular story that I told. And I think a lot of people love it. And it's about Michelle Obama. And I think this story just translates into so many ways for so many different people. And I'll tell you the story. It's about how when Barack Obama was still president at the time, and they had a very busy day, and in the itinerary there was no lunch that was added. So very last minute, they decided to go to lunch somewhere. And, added security, they had to find a very remote restaurant where no one else was and block it off. And they went, they had a lovely time, lovely restaurant. And at the end, the waitress came and said that the chef wants to meet Michelle Obama. So she went in the kitchen and met him, and then came back and said, "You're not going to believe this. This was my high school boyfriend." And Barack Obama said, "Imagine if your life was a little bit different, you could have been the owner of this beautiful, quaint restaurant." And she said, "If my life turned out differently, he would have been the president of America."
Wow.
Savage. So it's that confidence in knowing what your worth is, and also not letting external factors tell you what your worth is. And I think this is probably the biggest message that I get repeatedly from the guests as well, which is knowing your worth is probably the best gift that you can give to yourself.
Do you think it's something that can be learned over time to really learn your worth, or people are just born with that innate confidence?
No, absolutely. It's a muscle that you can build over time, just like confidence, just like speaking in public. All of these are things that you can build over time with repeated practice. And I don't think any of us really are born with that, ability to see our worth. It just comes from, firstly, your environment, the people around you, your family, your friends at work, but also it can be an internal work that we do.
Have you seen much of a reaction from back home, Mauritius, since you dropped the Letters to My Younger Self podcast, in terms of like your analytics? Is it reaching people at home as you'd hoped it would?
You know what? I did get a lot of comments with the little Mauritian flag, so I know that the Mauritian people are resonating, but it's also resonating with a lot of people who are not Mauritian, but again, who come from places who might not necessarily have access to all the opportunities. And for me, even if like one person tells me this resonated really well and changed something about their perspective, that's enough.
Well, speaking of character development and all of these things, what do you think are the 3 top habits that people can, maybe interpret in their day-to-day life that can maybe help with character development?
Okay, good question. I think the first one with that would be definitely mindsets. So making sure that whatever you're doing, you know where that comes from, because we talk a lot about generational trauma. We talk a lot about limiting factors, what society has told us. So know why you are making decisions, whether it is which job you're doing, which people you're hanging out with. All of that needs to be very clear. So your reason behind your mindsets should be clear to you. So first, that's awareness. The second thing definitely is who you surround yourself with. I think we've all heard that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And if you're in a room where you are the best, you're probably in the wrong room, because they will drag you down eventually. So always surrounding yourself with people who will really motivate you to be the best version of yourself. And not only cheerleading friends, but also people who will question you when they think you're not doing something right. And the third thing is just be curious and dream, and that's one thing that for me, it came over time, because I also just followed the path that everybody else was doing, and then eventually realized that, okay, why am I doing this? I need to dream bigger and aim for bigger things. And I think, again, kids, when you ask them what do they want to be, they'll tell you astronaut or a princess. But what do we say? Well, that job that is very realistic. So why do we limit our dreams based on what's realistic? We should just go crazy.
Was it your experiences at Oxford and Cambridge and the people there that gave you that mentality, or do you think it was something else that gave you the dream big?
Honestly, it was not really Oxford and Cambridge. I think there I got to discover myself and my confidence. But since I started the content creation world, meeting other creatives, that's when you meet the crazy people and you think, okay, they are there because they dared to dream, and you start hearing their journey. You start to hear how they had their full conviction that this is going to happen. So I'm going to put my all into it. And that conviction is something that we all need to believe in our own worth and what we can achieve. And that's where I learned that definitely from the creatives.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of podcasts, they talk about success. It is very easy. Just do this, buy that, and all of these things. How do you avoid making the content feeling overly idealistic?
Okay, so for me, whenever I have the podcast, I think this is very much similar to this. It's just a conversation. I never send list of questions to my guests. And usually the people that come on are either people I really want to hear from, or people I think will contribute something really meaningful to my audience. And it's just pure curiosity for me. So there's never an agenda of, okay, I need them to say this and this. I just sit there fully forgetting that this is being recorded and just have a full-ass conversation where it's just between us. And I think that prevents me from going into that route of let's try to preach people. Right. So because it's coming from a place of curiosity, other people also listen from a place of curiosity.
And the purpose of the stories that you're telling is to empower women, to motivate us, which is amazing. So, and also to just pursue our dreams. So if there's people today finally watching who maybe feel like they're stuck in a rut, who need to take that next step, is there anything you've learned in your own personal experience or through the podcast that the one thing that we should do to take our next step towards our goals?
Yeah, I think being in a rut and having a dip is very normal. And this is something I was discussing with a fellow podcaster the other day, is that growth is never linear, right? We all think that this is going to be our trajectory, but we all go through this, and then we eventually grow. So it's just being okay with that, you know, the hard times happen, the dips happen, but it's usually teaching you something really important. So try to see what am I meant to learn from this? And you never kind of like lose if you're trying something new, or if you're struggling with something, it's probably because the universe is trying to teach you something. So try and see, what can I take from this so I'm never in this situation again? And then just always see everything as an opportunity, whether it is an opportunity to learn, to grow, or to pivot. And pivoting is super important. The one thing in life that's constant is change. So we need to be able to adapt whenever something changes or life throws unexpected curveballs at us. So just the adaptability is really important. So just, you know, if you're going through something, try and see, what can I change here, or what can I learn, and then move on. Because of course it's okay to like wallow a little bit if something doesn't go right and just feel sad about it, but not for too long, and just move on and learn and grow.
What can I change? What can I learn? Love that so much. A great note to leave it on. If people are watching today and they're interested and they want to learn more about you, how can they find you? How can they listen to your stuff?
Yeah, if you want to find me, you can check me out on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. We are on all social media platforms. And also, I have a website if you want to get in touch. I would love to hear from you.
Dr. Sheen Gurrib, thank you so much for your time this morning. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you, Farah.
Thank you, Casey.
And that brings us to the end of the Lovin Dubai show. We're back here on Monday morning, same time, same place. Have a beautiful weekend. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.